My name is Evelyn, I'm 30 years old. Today I'm going to talk about the day that my parents disowned me at 18. Years later, they begged to meet the son they rejected. It's a pleasure to have you here. Stay tuned until the end and tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far my story has gone. And click on like, subscribe and activate the bell, so you don't miss the next stories here on the channel. Either you give this child up for adoption, or you walk out that door and never come back. Those were my mother's exact words. My father stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes cold like stone. There was no warmth in his face. No sign of the man who used to braid my hair before school, or tuck me in at night. That version of him had disappeared the moment I told them I was pregnant. They said I had shamed the family, that the father of my child, Derek, was beneath me. He wasn't educated, didn't come from a decent background, and worst of all, he wasn't the kind of man they could parade at church or social events. But I loved him, and more than that, I had made my decision. I was going to keep my baby. I remember how heavy my bag felt as I walked out that night. Not because it was full, but because it was everything I had left of 18 years. 2 sweaters, my birth certificate, some underwear, and a phone with a cracked screen. No goodbyes. No hugs. My mother turned her back before I even reached the door. I didn't have a plan. Derek tried to be there in the beginning, but he was 20 and barely keeping himself afloat. A few months in, he disappeared, ghosted me completely. That hurt, but not nearly as much as knowing my parents had wiped their hands of me, like I was some stain on the family portrait. I spent that first night in a park. It was spring, but the cold sank into my bones. I remember curling up on a bench, wrapping my arms around my belly, whispering promises to the life growing inside me. I'll protect you, even if nobody protects me. The weeks that followed were brutal. I couch surfed, stayed in shelters, ate meals donated by kind strangers in church kitchens. I cleaned motel rooms during the day, and took online GED classes at night. I was always tired, always scared, but I never let myself regret the decision. There were nights I'd sit on the bathroom floor of a shelter, holding my belly, and crying so quietly I thought my ribs would break from trying to stay silent. Every time I thought about calling my parents, my pride would scream louder than the pain. They didn't want me. They made it perfectly clear. The day my son Micah was born, I was alone. There were no flowers, no waiting room full of anxious relatives. Just me and a nurse who held my hand through the contractions, because I couldn't afford a doula. When I heard his first cry, something broke inside me. It wasn't sadness, it was a release. A dam bursting after months of being strong. Micah was perfect. Tiny fingers, big eyes that looked just like mine. The first time I held him, I made a new promise. I would never make him feel the way my parents made me feel. Disposable, shameful, unwanted. The first year with Micah was a blur of exhaustion, love, and survival. I rented a room in a shared house with 3 other single moms. We took turns watching each other's kids. I worked nights, cleaned houses on weekends, and took free parenting classes at the community center. Every milestone, his first smile, first steps, first word, I celebrated alone. But I celebrated. Not once did my parents reach out. I'd look at my phone some days, just staring at the screen, willing it to light up with their names. Nothing. Not even on my birthday. Not even on Micah's. People say time heals. That's only half true. Time dulls the sting, but it also buries the anger deeper. It settles in your bones and becomes part of how you walk, how you breathe. I told myself I didn't need them, and most days I believed it. I had Micah. I had a small but growing sense of independence. I was becoming someone I recognized in the mirror again. Still, the silence from them hurt more than any insult could have. Because silence wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. It was as if I had died that night at 18, and no one mourned. And that was only the beginning. Because 12 years later, after everything I had built on my own, they came back. They came back, and not for me. They wanted the boy they once called a mistake. I moved through life like a shadow, present, functioning, but invisible to the world that used to know me. Nobody from my old neighborhood reached out. None of my high school friends stayed in touch. And my parents? Nothing. Not a call. Not a letter. Not even a rumor. It was like I had ceased to exist. At first, I thought they were just giving me space to come to my senses. That maybe, once they realized I was serious about raising my son, they'd soften. I'd imagine my mother calling me out of the blue saying, "We overreacted. Come home. Bring the baby." But the phone never rang. I eventually stopped hoping. Micah was a quiet baby, but always observant. He would stare at me with those big brown eyes like he could see right through all my bravado. I tried to shield him from the reality we lived in. A shared bedroom with paper-thin walls, meals that were sometimes just instant noodles, second-hand clothes that never quite fit. Still, I made our world feel normal. I read to him every night, sang lullabies even when I had no voice left. I taped stars made of foil above his crib to mimic the sky. I celebrated each of his birthdays with whatever I could afford, a cupcake, a balloon, a trip to the park. He never complained. The hardest part was watching other families. I'd see grandparents holding babies at the park, or hear other moms talking about how their parents helped with childcare. It made me feel like there was a whole layer of comfort in the world that I just didn't have. One day when Micah was about 4, he asked, "Mommy, do I have a grandma?" I froze. I was folding laundry on the bed, and the question hit me like a punch to the chest. I looked at him, my sweet boy with a Lego in one hand and a sock puppet on the other, and I didn't know what to say. "You do," I finally whispered. "But she and I don't talk anymore." "Why?" "It's complicated. Sometimes grown-ups fight and forget how to make up." "Can I meet her?" That one stung the most. I didn't answer. I just changed the subject. But that night, I cried quietly into my pillow, because no child should ever have to ask permission to know where they come from. By then, I was working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. It didn't pay much, but it had benefits, and it was stable. I took night classes in psychology, hoping that one day I could become a counselor. I figured if I could survive what I'd been through, maybe I could help other people survive too. Micah grew fast, smart, kind, empathetic in a way that made adults do double takes. Teachers loved him. Strangers complimented his manners. And I knew deep in my bones that I had done something right, even if nobody else saw it. But the absence of my parents always lingered like a shadow. On my 25th birthday, I found myself standing outside their house. I hadn't planned it. I was in the area for a delivery job, and my car just sort of took a turn. The house looked exactly the same. Same curtains. Same porch swing. Same flower beds my mom used to tend with white gloves. I didn't get out. I sat there in the car for 10 minutes, engine running, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to walk up to the door and knock. To say, "Look, I made it. You were wrong." But another part, the bigger, louder part, knew they hadn't earned that. That day I drove away without being seen, and it felt like reclaiming a tiny piece of myself. Then, on Micah's 7th birthday, something strange happened. He got a card in the mail. No return address. No signature. Just a generic birthday message and a $20 bill inside. I stared at it for a long time. My gut told me exactly who it was from. And I hated how fast my hands started shaking. I threw it away. Micah never saw it. That was the only sign of them for years. No follow-up. No phone call. No apology. I spent the rest of my 20s building us a life. I finally graduated. Started working at a community mental health center. Moved into a 2-bedroom apartment that I could decorate how I wanted. I bought new furniture. I picked out curtains. I created peace. By 30, I had something close to stability. Not wealth. Not ease. But dignity. And then, out of nowhere, they returned. 12 years after they turned their backs on me, my younger sister, Lena, called. I hadn't heard her voice in over a decade. "Dad's sick," she said. "They want to see you." She didn't say they missed me. She didn't say they were sorry. Just that he was sick. And they wanted to meet Micah. What would you do if it were you? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe and activate the bell to receive all notifications so you don't miss the next story. Lena's voice on the phone had cracked with something that almost sounded like guilt. Or maybe just discomfort. I didn't ask many questions during that first call. I couldn't. My chest was tight, my ears buzzed, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. All I managed to say was, "What do you mean he's sick? Dad's heart, she said. It's failing. Doctors say it could be months, maybe less. I should have felt something. Panic, maybe. Or sadness. But there was just numbness. A dull, hollow kind that I'd gotten used to over the years. They want to see you, she added. And, Micah. That was when the ice inside me cracked. They want to see him. Now. After all this time. I know, she said quickly. I told them it was a long shot, but they asked me to try. I didn't say yes. But I didn't hang up either. That night, I watched Micah sleep. 12 years old. Long legs, soft curls on his forehead. One sock always off by morning. He had a small scar on his chin from when he fell off his bike last summer. I traced it gently with my finger and asked myself, what would I be bringing him into? I couldn't deny a small part of me was curious. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to hear what lies they had prepared after a decade of silence. But more than that, I wanted closure. Not for them, for me. A week later, I agreed to meet. We drove to their house on a gray Saturday. Micah didn't know the full story. Just that we were going to meet my parents for the first time in many years. He had questions, but I answered them vaguely. My voice trembled too much when I tried to explain. As soon as we turned onto their street, my stomach dropped. The house looked just like it did the day I left. White siding, blue shutters, the same wind chime near the porch. Lena met us at the door. She looked older, tired, but still familiar. Her eyes softened when she saw Micah. He looks just like you, she whispered. Inside, the air felt stiff. Too clean. My mother sat in the armchair, her hands folded neatly on her lap. My father was in a recliner, thinner than I remembered, a nasal cannula tucked under his nose. His face was pale, sunken, but those same cold eyes met mine. Evelyn, he said with a nod. Like I had come home from a trip. Like nothing had ever happened. My mother stood. You look well. And this must be Micah. Micah gave a polite, uncertain smile. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. He's 12 now, I said. Smart. Kind. Top of his class. We sat. It was quiet for a long time. Awkward. Formal. My mother brought out cookies like we were guests instead of blood. They asked Micah questions about school, his hobbies, sports. He answered, because he was raised to be respectful. But I could see the confusion in his eyes. After half an hour, I couldn't take it anymore. Why now? I asked. Why, after 12 years, do you suddenly want to meet him? My mother looked at my father. He cleared his throat. A man starts to think, when he's near the end, about regrets. Missed chances. You didn't just miss a chance. You threw me out. You chose your pride over your daughter. Over your grandson. He looked away. It was a different time, my mother said. I laughed. Quietly, bitterly. Don't give me that. This isn't about reflection. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry because now suddenly he's real. And you want to play grandparent before it's too late. Is that so wrong? She asked. It's too late for bonding. You made your choice 12 years ago. Micah watched the exchange quietly, his eyes darting from face to face. Mom, he whispered later in the car. They didn't feel like family. I nodded. That's because they stopped being family a long time ago. Over the next few weeks, they kept trying. Cards. Invites. Phone calls. Lena texted me constantly, asking if we'd come for Sunday lunch, for Christmas, for Dad's birthday. I considered it. I did. But every time I saw my son's face, I remembered who had stood by him, who had rocked him through fevers, helped him with homework, stayed up worrying. And it wasn't them. It was me. And I had nothing left to prove. Despite everything, part of me wanted to believe their intentions were pure. For weeks after that first meeting, Lena kept trying. She sent photos of the house decorated for the holidays, a short video of my dad struggling to play a song on the old piano, a text that simply read, Mom says she misses your laugh. It was surreal. Like someone had flipped a switch and decided the past never happened. As if those 12 years of silence and rejection could be swept under the rug with a few memories and niceties. I started seeing a therapist around that time. I hadn't planned to. One of the counselors at the clinic I worked at offered free sessions for staff, and I decided to try. At first, I didn't even know what to say. I sat there, arms crossed, heart closed. But eventually the words came. I don't know if I want them back in my life. I just know I don't trust them. She nodded and said, "You don't owe anyone access to your healing." That stuck with me. Micah asked more questions too. "Why don't they call me, Mom? They said they wanted to see me, but it's always you they talk to." "Because they don't know how to be grandparents," I told him honestly. "They're still learning how to be people." I watched him absorb that, silently. He didn't bring it up again, but I could tell it stayed with him. Then came the invitation that changed everything. A birthday dinner. My dad's 68th. A quiet evening, just family. "One more chance," Lena texted. Micah wanted to go. Not because he felt close to them, but because he was curious. And maybe part of me was too. Maybe I needed to see what they'd built in our absence. Or if anything had really changed. We went. The house looked exactly the same. My mom had cooked a big dinner, just like she used to. Roast, mashed potatoes, green beans. My dad sat at the head of the table like always, thinner now, slower, but still trying to command the room with old habits. For the first 20 minutes, it was pleasant enough. Lena made jokes. Micah was polite if a little distant. I mostly observed. Then somewhere between dessert and coffee it shifted. My mom said something casual. About how this family had finally started to come together again. I couldn't let that slide. Started to come together? You do realize you cut me off for over a decade, right? Like I was some disgrace. My dad cleared his throat. We made mistakes. We thought we were doing what was best. I stared at him. You threw me out. Pregnant. Alone. We didn't know what else to do, my mother said, almost defensive. You were young. We thought you'd come back. You thought I'd give up my child and beg to be let back in. No one said anything. Micah looked at me, his face tense. I turned to my dad. Do you even know what it cost me? What I went through? I was homeless. Hungry. I gave birth alone. You could have helped. You didn't even call. I regret it, he said quietly. Regret isn't the same as taking responsibility. The room went silent. Micah stood up, excused himself, and went to the porch. I followed a minute later. He was sitting on the steps, staring at the yard. You okay? He nodded. It's weird. They act like we're just meeting after a vacation. Not like they ignored us for my whole life. I sat beside him. They're pretending because it's easier than owning what they did. Do we have to come back here? I looked at him carefully. Do you want to? He shook his head. Not really. I have everything I need. That moment broke something in me. Something I didn't know I'd been holding on to. The part of me that still wanted them to make it right. Back inside, I told them calmly. We won't be coming again. I gave you a chance. Not for you, for him. But he doesn't need this. And neither do I. My mom started to protest, but I raised a hand. This isn't anger. It's a boundary. I survived without you. I won't let you confuse him or rewrite history to make yourselves feel better. Then we left. Micah didn't look back. And for the first time in years, neither did I. After that dinner, everything went quiet again. But this time it was different. The silence wasn't cold like before. It wasn't abandonment. It was choice. Mine. I didn't block them. I didn't send angry texts. I just stopped responding. And they must have understood, because eventually they stopped reaching out too. I focused on Micah. On work. On healing. Micah never asked about them again. Not once. He seemed lighter after that night. Like something unspoken had been lifted from his chest. He focused on school, joined the robotics club, started writing short stories. We had dinner together every night, just the two of us. Peace became our default setting. Then a few months later, Lena called again. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me answer. He passed away, she said quietly. Dad. This morning. I waited to feel something. A rush of emotion, maybe grief. But there was only stillness. Thanks for letting me know, I said. She hesitated. Mom asked if you'd come to the funeral. Just you. She thought maybe. I'm not coming. The pause on the line stretched. Okay, she said. Her voice didn't hold surprise. Just resignation. We hung up. And I sat on the couch for a long time, staring out the window. Then I made dinner like usual. I didn't tell Micah until a few days later. Your grandfather died, I said one night over tacos. He blinked. Oh, are you okay? Yeah, I am. Do we have to go to something? No, we're staying home. He nodded and kept eating. That was it. The funeral was on a Saturday. That morning, I woke up early, even though I hadn't planned to. I got dressed, made breakfast, watched Micah leave for a friend's house. Then, without quite deciding to, I drove. I didn't go inside. The church parking lot was full, and I stayed in my car, tucked in the back. I saw familiar faces, neighbors, cousins, old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. My mother stepped out of a black car, dressed in gray, supported by Lena. I watched them file in, and then I drove away. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel relief or rage. Just quiet. When I got home, I poured myself a cup of tea, sat in the backyard, and watched the sun go down. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was no longer waiting for an apology that would never come. I had spent years carrying around the weight of rejection, trying to fill the gap my parents left behind. I wanted them to recognize the pain they caused, to admit they were wrong, to make it better. But the truth is, some wounds don't get apologies. Some wounds get closure in silence. And that's enough. Weeks passed. Spring came. I planted flowers in the small garden beside our porch, something my mother used to do. Micah helped me. He liked the dirt under his nails, the way color slowly pushed through soil. One evening he looked at me and said, "I'm glad it's just us." "Me too," I said. And I meant it more than I ever had. It's been a year since my father died. A year since I sat in that church parking lot and decided not to go inside. A year of space, real, open space in my life and in my mind. Micah turned 13 last month. He's taller than me now, and his voice has that soft edge of adolescence. He still holds my hand when we cross busy streets, though. And at night, when I pass his room, I sometimes catch him reading with a flashlight under the covers. I don't scold him. I smile quietly and let him have that small rebellion. I never reopened the door to my mother. She sent a few letters in the months after the funeral. Handwritten, careful. She wrote about the garden, about the dog she adopted. She never wrote the words I wanted most. "I'm sorry." She skirted around them, danced near them, but never landed there. Eventually the letters stopped. I kept one. The last one. It wasn't special. Just a simple update about a book club she joined. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe as proof that she tried in her own way. Or maybe to remind myself that I didn't imagine it all. That the silence had been real. And the attempt, too little and too late, had also been real. Sometimes people say, "But she's your mother." As if that title should grant automatic forgiveness. As if blood alone erases pain. But motherhood isn't biology. It's presence. It's protection. It's love shown consistently, not just when convenient or when time runs out. I don't hate her. I just don't have space in my life for people who only want to love me on their terms. Micah and I are okay. More than okay. He started high school this year. Honors classes. He's curious, thoughtful, and fiercely loyal. He asks deep questions. He writes essays that make his teachers tear up. He tells me he wants to be a teacher one day, or maybe a counselor. Like you, Mom. But for kids. We have traditions now. Pancakes every Sunday. Movie nights on Fridays. We plant something new in the garden every spring. Small rituals that make up a life. Last week he brought home an assignment. Write about someone who changed your life. He picked me. He didn't tell me until after he turned it in. His teacher sent me a scanned copy of his essay. In it he wrote, "My mom never gave up on me, even when she had every reason to give up on the world. She taught me that love isn't loud or flashy. Sometimes love is just staying, even when it's hard." I cried. Not because it hurt, but because I finally felt seen. This is the life I built. Not because of what was given to me, but in spite of what was withheld. I used to think closure required conversation, or apology, or understanding. But sometimes closure is a quiet, steady refusal to let the past keep defining you. Sometimes it's a peaceful dinner with your son, a laugh shared over dishes, a garden full of things that bloom anyway. And sometimes it's walking away from the people who couldn't love you right, and never walking back. Because the silence they gave me, I turned it into peace. And peace, once you've earned it, is not something you ever give away again. If you like stories like these, click like, subscribe, activate the bell, and send it to someone you think will also like it.